HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Parable of the Knocker, the true crime story of a prosecutor's fight to bring a serial killer to justice, by Bryan Porter. Read by Michael Butler Murray. Author's Note: 2 months after the conclusion of the serial murder trial that is the subject of this book, I received a call from a local author who asked to meet me for coffee. During our conversation, he informed me that he wanted to write the true crime story of the Severance case. He wondered if I would be willing to give him exclusive access to evidence, photographs, and documents. He asked me to provide inside information about the investigation and my trial strategy. I wanted the story to be told, and was flattered an established author was interested in it. I said I would consider it. Internet research revealed the author was respected and well-credentialed, with several popular nonfiction titles to his name. I believed he would do a good job writing the book. But he had not lived and breathed the case as I had. He had not met the families of the victims. He had not been brought to tears by the grief or awed by their resilience. He had not felt the stress of putting the trial together or the fear of failure. He had not lain awake at night wondering whether he was up to the task. There was only one way to make sure the real story was told. I would write it myself. The case involved a significant personal journey for me. I had just started my first term as the elected prosecutor when the Alexandria Assassin case broke, and at the outset was unprepared for both the attention I would receive and the complexity of the investigation. When I began to write these words, I recalled the sleepless nights and tremendous stress I labored under. I realized that, with the help of a countless number of people, I had grown as a person and as a lawyer. Committing the journey of personal growth to paper was difficult, but ultimately cathartic. I hope the general lessons I learned through my trial by fire may be useful to others facing challenges. Trust your gut, seek the help of others, and believe in your team. For listeners who happen to investigate or prosecute murders, several specific lessons are evident. Homicide is an offense against the victim, their family, and the rule of law. You have a sacred obligation to honor the memory of the victim and to provide them a voice because they cannot speak for themselves. You must investigate thoroughly, charge wisely, and treat the surviving victims with respect. Beware the specter of confirmation bias. Adhere to the rules of ethics. Above all else, dedicate yourself to the case and handle it with the requisite diligence. For society at large, there are lessons about the intersection of guns, violence, and mental health that can be gleaned. This is a crucial issue, one that grows more pressing with every mass shooting or serial killer case reported on the news. The same combination of anger, resentment, and isolation from mainstream society that drove Charles Severance fuels mass shooters and terrorists. Much more attention needs to be focused on addressing and hopefully preventing these needless crimes. One of the surprising points about Severance is that he was rational. He did not hear voices or receive commands from the neighbor's dogs. He knew what he wanted to do and planned his crimes methodically. He understood right from wrong. He did not want to be caught. Severance was not schizophrenic, and therefore did not fit neatly into the stereotype of a crazed serial killer. Severance suffered from mental illnesses, namely at least 2 personality disorders, and they definitely contributed to his crimes. But Severance's rationality and intelligence rendered him capable of avoiding the attention of the mental health system. He was never hospitalized or identified as a potential threat to the public. He was crafty enough to fly under the radar. The same is true of many of the mass shooters plaguing our nation. Most have never received mental health treatment or been identified as a risk to others before resorting to violence. Unfortunately, while their numbers are few, other Charles Severances walk among us. Blithely relying on the mental health system to identify and stop them is naive. Mental health evaluation and treatment are necessary parts of the response, to be sure, So is a comprehensive review of how the American legal system responds to mentally ill persons in both civil and criminal contexts. More difficult to achieve in the current political climate, but just as significant, are reasonable restrictions on firearms. One of my main reasons for writing is to provide my thoughts on these matters. I share them along with some concrete proposals for dealing with the intersection of guns and mental health in the afterword. If the book can help foster a productive conversation, perhaps a little good can flow from a tragedy. The unrealistic way criminal investigations are depicted in the popular culture also inspired me to write. Television shows and movies usually omit the humanity of prosecutors and police detectives. Public servants are shown as automatons who focus laser-like on finding the killer and then have no second thoughts. Nor do they have a personal life. In the 44 minutes of a televised crime drama, there is little time for families or for the immense stress that accompanies a significant case. The dedicated team of detectives and agents who worked this case did so with commitment, professionalism, and personal sacrifice. They are outstanding public servants who should be praised for their diligence. They deserve to be recognized, and I write in part to do so. Television tremendously simplifies the investigative process, a dramatic convention that impacts real-life murder cases. Jurors inured to television have unrealistic expectations about how crimes should be investigated. They may expect inculpatory forensic evidence, such as DNA, to exist in every case, unaware that it is, in fact, exceptionally rare for detectives to locate such evidence at a crime scene. Jurors might remember an outlandish investigative technique that proved successful on their favorite police procedural, and then question why the real-world detectives did not mention the fictional technique in court. Most citizens have been conditioned to believe the phrase circumstantial evidence is a synonym for weak case. This is neither legally nor factually true. The very nature of murder cases makes it almost certain the prosecution will have to rely on circumstantial evidence to some extent. In my business, we have a name for the phenomenon of jurors bringing unrealistic expectations with them into the courtroom: the CSI effect, referring to the eponymous primetime drama. I write in part to explain how things work in the real world, and how outlandish are the popular media depictions of criminal investigations. Finally, the first of our murders was the 2003 killing of Nancy Dunning. Nancy's death remained an unsolved mystery for over a decade. During that decade, suspicion unfairly, and without any supporting evidence, descended on her husband, Jim. Even now, years after the trial, I occasionally have someone tell me, Jim must have been involved. Such unjustified speculation makes my blood boil, particularly since Jim passed away before Nancy's killer was identified and arrested. No one who watched the trial could harbor any belief that Jim was culpable in his wife's death. I fervently hope this book establishes, once and for all, that Jim Dunning was an innocent man. One other topic urged me to write. In recent years, prosecutors have received a significant amount of negative attention in the public arena. This is understandable, given the authority inherent in our jobs. In some cases, the criticism is justified. DAs are human. In any large population, there will be some bad actors. A prosecutor who abuses the power inherent in his office should be exposed and taken to task. It is rare for the media to report on a prosecutor doing a good job. As one reporter explained, a headline reading "Government wins big murder case" doesn't sell papers. That may be true, and railing against an unfair world won't accomplish much. But when members of the general public only hear about corrupt district attorneys, they begin to believe these exceptions are the rule. I write to change the narrative about my chosen career. I consider myself part of what I call the new paradigm of prosecutors. Nationwide, elected district attorneys have backed away from tough-on-crime postures with regards to nonviolent offenses, realizing the local prosecutor has a duty to serve a constituency comprised of many groups. business owners, victims, witnesses, law enforcement, and the school system, to name a few. The new paradigm of prosecutors realize that offenders are part of their constituency and must be considered when deciding policy or how to dispose of a charged offense. Elected prosecutors must inculcate an office culture in which winning is not the ultimate end, and criminal defendants are not seen as the enemy. Us-them dichotomies are divisive and constitute lower-level thinking. Prosecutors have to rise above a view that it is us against the world. A prosecutor's duty is not to get a conviction at all costs. Likewise, it is not our job to put people in jail. Our responsibility is to hold offenders accountable for their intentional actions by obtaining just results. As Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson, the lead prosecutor in the Nuremberg trials, once said, in a famous quote, "The prosecutor is expected to land hard blows, but not foul ones, and is expected to temper her prosecutorial zeal with human kindness." Holding someone accountable for their actions does not always mean active jail time. Nonviolent offenders usually merit a helping hand as opposed to a heavy one. A forward-thinking prosecutor understands that the goal is to help the offender learn from their mistakes and become a contributing part of society. A just result can often be accomplished through a combination of probation, treatment for underlying issues, and community service. Diversion programs that allow citizens charged with lower-level offenses to avoid the stigma of a criminal conviction can help reduce recidivism. Criminal discovery is the process by which the prosecution and defense exchange information before the trial of a criminal case. Because the amount of discovery material in the Severance case was massive, I discuss the process in detail later in this book. For now, I will say that I consider criminal discovery to be one of the most important obligations of a public prosecutor. Under my watch, my office is exceptionally forthcoming with discovery material. I am always considering the manner in which my office executes its mission. The worst justification for a policy is that's the way we've always done it. I strive to stay abreast of current issues in criminal law that are important to the community I represent. I routinely listen to input from stakeholders such as the police, probation, and members of the defense bar. I have never seen a prosecutor's role as a protector of civil liberties accurately described. The very first thing my assistants do when they catch a case is issue spot, scoring the file for constitutional issues, such as warrantless searches and custodial interviews of suspects. Where they find police mistakes, they disclose them to opposing counsel. A huge part of their job is to provide legal instruction to law enforcement officers, pointing out where errors were made and how to avoid them in the future. I have spent a career teaching law enforcement officers and prosecutors to uphold the Constitution they swore to defend. Over the years, I have taught literally thousands of police officers criminal procedure and the law of search and seizure. I have traveled all over Virginia to provide this crucial legal instruction and have presented in states as varied as Maine, Nevada, Maryland, and Georgia. I always emphasize the court's preference for search warrants, telling cops that warrantless searches are presumed to be illegal. I stress that citizens have the right to refuse a request for consent to a search of their car or person, and that deciding to not answer the questions of a detective is never a crime. I am confident few have done more to encourage law enforcement officers to adhere to the precepts of constitutional law. In recent years, I have presented the same material I teach to the police to private citizens. The public has a right to know where the line between civil liberty and police intrusions has been drawn by the courts, and I am proud to be a conduit by which they learn it. A prosecutor who honors her oath of office is not the enemy of civil rights. If there is a threat to civil liberties, it comes from the big data private corporations. I pose a simple question. Who is Facebook's customer? Is it a person who opens a Facebook account? Of course not, because Facebook does not charge for its service. Facebook's real customers are other companies, seeking to obtain entree to Facebook users. Big data corporations monetize the personal information of their users, selling it to others who seek to hone their advertising. Worse yet, there is almost no judicial oversight of these practices. Facebook does not need to obtain a warrant from a judge before selling its information to the highest bidder. As a local prosecutor, the vast majority of people I see charged with crimes are not violent recidivists. To the contrary, most of the crimes in my office's responsibility are nonviolent misdemeanors. Over the years, I have become convinced that two factors, above all others, account for a disproportionate amount of criminal behavior: mental health issues and substance abuse. In many offenders, both of these problems are present. A prosecutor who uses the threat of jail as a one-size-fits-all response will never increase the collective felicity of his constituency. Innovative programs must be introduced to confront the dual specters of mental health and substance abuse. In Alexandria, we have adopted two such programs. In early 2017, my office introduced a Mental Health Initiative, MHI. A senior prosecutor is assigned to run the MHI. She adopts cases from other assistants in the office in which mental health issues significantly contributed to the underlying crime. The MHI is designed to provide the offender with a host of services and treatment in an effort to address the root cause of their issues and get them on the right track. In many cases, a criminal conviction is avoided. As a new paradigm program, MHI requires my office to go beyond the threat of jail time and liaise with a host of city agencies such as probation and the Department of Health and Community Services. In another example of interagency cooperation, Alexandria has recently adopted and initiated a drug treatment court. This comprehensive program provides substance abuse treatment and compliance monitoring to help the offender break the cycle of addiction. If the substance abuse is an attempt to self-medicate an undiagnosed mental illness, mental health professionals stand by to assist. Importantly, the program requires the agreement of the person charged. They truly must want assistance. The buy-in component allows for a host of success stories. In my brief stint as the elected prosecutor, I have adopted other progressive policies. My office does not stack charges, indicting as many counts as possible in an effort to force a defendant to plead guilty. I have prohibited my assistants from requesting cash bail for low-level offenses. It is unconscionable that a person would remain in jail pre-trial for want of $100 to secure a bond. I have recently expanded our misdemeanor diversion program, allowing certain nonviolent offenders to avoid damaging their future by incurring a criminal conviction. Courts repeatedly remind prosecutors that we are ministers of justice, whose duty is to ensure a just result is reached in every case. If a prosecutor is personally convinced a suspect is innocent, then she cannot ethically prosecute the case and must dismiss it. This obligation to seek justice means a prosecutor's conviction rate is not the right way of evaluating her performance. In many cases, a prosecutor's duty to obtain a just result will dictate she dismiss a case for lack of evidence. If intentionally losing a case is often the just result, it follows that keeping track of wins and losses is lower-level thinking that does not accurately measure how a prosecutor does her job. In my office, I do not compile won-loss records or conviction rate statistics for my assistants. To the contrary, I evaluate them on their adherence to the rules of ethics and their professional judgment. Indeed, I consider adherence to the rules of ethics applicable to prosecutors, which I discuss at several points later on in this book, to be the prime directive for my assistants. Violent crime is another matter entirely. The prosecutor has sworn an oath to protect the community from violent criminals. Once the DA has weighed the evidence and decided to formally charge someone with murdering another human being, the just result, from her perspective, will be to secure a conviction and put the murderer in prison so as to protect the citizenry. There is definite pressure to secure a conviction in a murder case. If the defendant is acquitted, the victim and his family have no justice, and a killer walks free, empowered to act with impunity in the future. While I encourage new paradigm prosecutors to be progressive in their approach to crime, they must remain cognizant of their responsibility to address the needs and concerns of another group, those who have been victimized by violent acts. Prosecutors have a duty to sincerely weigh the wishes of victims in deciding how to prosecute a case. In Virginia, the legislature has enacted a Victim's Bill of Rights, which statutorily requires the DA to solicit and consider a victim's wishes before disposing of a case. I fear that the rights of victims, particularly those in violent crimes, may be misunderstood or overlooked by the general public. The vast majority of crimes that come before my office are not the work of hardened criminals. Most people deserve a second chance and assistance in resuming the right path. However, there is a thankfully small class of people who are intent on causing havoc and harm to others. When a person maliciously kills another human being, stringent punishment is necessary. The hard part of my profession is having the requisite judgment to determine which offenders pose an unacceptable risk of violence. In crafting this narrative, I tried not to sensationalize. The unvarnished facts are sufficiently compelling, and I did my best to stick to them, relying on trial transcripts and investigative reports to ensure accuracy. Where possible, I used direct quotes. I believe I avoided veering too far into speculation, although, since Severance never gave his side of the story, I have indulged in a few inferences about his motivations and methods. I clearly identify those passages where I was forced to resort to conjecture. For obvious reasons, I strived to honor the privacy of the huge number of people affected by Severance's rampage. That group obviously includes the victims and their friends and families, but others were reluctant players in the case. I estimate that over 50 people connected to this narrative satisfy the Virginia Code's definition of victim. With that large number comes an equally large number of reactions to the tragedy. For example, some of the victims have become public advocates for reasonable restrictions on guns. Others have avoided the glare of the public's eye and remained reticent. My best course with regards to respecting the privacy of people affected was to admit names and identifying information where doing so was possible. I also studiously avoided speculating about how the surviving victims felt or were impacted. I tried to narrate from my viewpoint, focusing on the police investigation and trial. If a listener wonders why a particular person was not named, rest assured the person's privacy was the reason. There were an immense number of people who worked on this investigation. So many it is impossible to name them all or detail their contributions. By necessity, I focus on the 4 detectives and the 3 prosecutors who, along with me, formed the core trial team. There are dozens of others just as deserving of mention. I hope the listener will forgive the constraints of the written word and understand those who are mentioned are surrogates for a number of others who worked diligently on the case. The epigrams are Severance's words, quoted directly from the collection of his writings recovered by police. At trial, I would collectively refer to these horrifying documents as the Manifesto of Hate. Prologue, January 1997. I think that asshole just stole a can of soup from a shopping cart. The rookie police officer looked up from the report he was writing and glanced to his right. The eerie red glow from the police car's interior dome light, customized to allow an officer to write while not ruining his night vision, washed his training officer's face with crimson. The January air outside their parked police car was clear and crisp. The rookie followed his training officer's eyes as she stared toward the neon-lit facade of a nearby supermarket and a man standing just outside of the store entrance. After finishing their classroom instruction at the police academy, new police officers were assigned to ride with an experienced cop, known as a field training officer, FTO, This rookie had won the lottery by being assigned to FTO Adrian Miller. Miller was small of stature, but fearless. She was also tough and no-nonsense. Necessary qualities if she were going to teach the rookie how to stay safe in the always dangerous world of policing. The rookie had stopped his police cruiser in the parking lot of a nondescript strip mall. It seemed like a quiet spot, perfect for finishing the police report from an earlier call service. At Miller's direction, the rookie had backed into a parking space and left the engine running. If the pair received a hot radio run, the rookie could drop the transmission into drive, flip the switch for the emergency lights, and be moving forward within seconds. The rookie had been riding with Miller for the past 3 weeks. Throughout that time, the frigid January weather made it difficult to get out of the police car. Miller used the ample downtime to teach the little things cops need to know. Always look for expired registration stickers on license plates. Always sit with your back to the wall when eating in a restaurant, and always wear your watch with the face on the inside of your wrist to add a little protection to blood vessels if you're in a knife fight. Before the rookie could even put pen to paper, in 1997 police officers still wrote reports by hand. Miller had noticed a white male in his late 30s who walked, slightly stooped over, out of the supermarket. He was wearing a black leather bomber jacket. The man wore no hat or gloves, despite the freezing temperature. Of average height and weight, the man's dark hair was receding and featured a prominent widow's peak jutting out from his high forehead. Though his face was gaunt with thin cheeks and lips, most women would have considered him handsome. The intensity of the man's stare was striking. As he walked out of the grocery store, his eyes locked on the police car, like two pieces of iron drawn to a magnet. He stood stone still, with tendrils of smoky breath emanating from his nostrils as he exhaled. Something about him caused Miller's spider sense to tingle. Miller assumed that, at this distance, the man could not see into the police car. After 20 seconds of standing and staring, he seemed satisfied the officers posed no threat and began to walk away from the front of the store. As he did, the man passed a parked shopping cart full of canned goods. A large sign stood next to it proudly proclaiming, "Christmas Campaign to Help the Homeless." Miller watched as the man stopped near the sign and scanned the area, trying to determine if anyone was watching. With no warning, his right hand flashed into the cart. The man helped himself to several cans of food, placing them in the large pockets of his leather jacket. After casting a sidelong glance back at the police car, he walked to a decrepit Ford pickup truck and got into the driver's seat. First the taillights came on, at least the left one did, as the right was cracked and burned out, and then the engine roared to life, discharging a puff of black smoke from the exhaust. Like most cops, Miller had a distinct sense of right and wrong, and stealing canned goods destined for the homeless offended it. As she watched the man get into his pickup truck and start to drive off, she looked over at the rookie. "That guy just stole from a homeless food drive. Get behind him and pull him over." "You heard me. Light him up." The rookie put the cruiser into drive, activated the overhead emergency lights, and pulled in behind the pickup. The truck slowly drove on for about 100 yards, meandering about the parking lot, as though the driver was thinking about gunning the engine and making a run for it. After the rookie squelched the siren for a second or two, the truck finally stopped in front of a video rental store. The rookie grabbed the microphone and marked out, "Unit 331 will be out on traffic in the 3600 block of King Street." As he awaited the dispatcher's reply, the rookie could see the man intently watching him in the reflection of the rearview mirror. Just as Miller had taught him to do, the rookie trained the police car's bright white spotlight on the parked truck. The light had trouble penetrating the haze belching from the pickup's exhaust pipe. The two police officers exited and walked toward the truck, with the rookie on the driver's side. They noticed the man in the truck was using a large external mirror mounted on the driver's door to watch them as they approached. The driver's window was down, and the rookie could hear the gentle twang of country music playing on the radio. "Sir, may I see your license and registration?" the rookie said, as he reached the window. The man in the truck stared straight ahead, with both.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?